To understand that, we first of all have to understand a concept called mass. How many of you have dealt with this in an earlier class, like the 4th grade? Okay. What did they tell you mass was? What's mass? Anyone? Brave soul?
The downward force on an object by gravity.
The downward force by gravity? That's not what I think of when I think of mass. What do they teach you typically?
The amount of matter something.
The amount of matter that something has. How much stuff something has. And that's pretty much the definition that you get in most classes. Now I'm going to need some help from you three. Thank you very much for volunteering. Come on down. I have some objects here. If you each face the class and hold out both hands. Your name, sir, again?
Barrett.
Barrett. Okay, one of each. And
Jackie.
Jackie? Courtney. Okay. Now, I've given each of these individuals 2 objects, and I'm going to give them exactly 20 seconds to figure out which of these 2 objects has a greater mass. They can do anything they want to figure that out. Da 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 da. Okay, we're out of time. Okay, Barrett. This one here, okay? Which one?
This one, it feels heavier.
Okay, it feels heavier. They're equal. Okay, let's give them a hand, folks. Okay. Now, the answer is, I don't know. I chose these 2 objects because they're pretty close to each other in mass. What I cared about was how they determined which had the greater mass. Now, for part of the time, they were holding them, and I'm going to try to get into their heads and think of what they were thinking. I'm thinking they were trying to measure which one was pushing down on the palm the most, which one was being pulled by the earth the most. And that's what we call the weight, okay? That's the weight force. Now, at one point, each of them did this, or this. Okay? They did a better job of catching it. They sped it up. They shook it. And that is what a physicist thinks of when they think of mass, is how hard is it to accelerate it? How hard is it to speed it up, to slow it down, to shake it? To shake it. Now, the important thing to know is that that is very, very different than the weight. Now, it is true that here on Earth, things that have a lot of mass weigh a lot. But we have to be a little bit more global in our thinking. We have to be willing to leave home, okay? If I had an anvil, a great big heavy anvil, and I was holding it in my hands, it would push down really hard on my palms. I'd have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to do this. If I took that anvil and I shook it, it would be really, really hard to shake. Now, if I take that anvil to the moon, where the gravitational field strength is 1/6 as big, it feels like I got stronger. It only weighs 1/6 what it did on the earth. It's not pushing down on my palms nearly as hard. But if I take that anvil and try to shake it, it's every bit as hard to shake on the moon as it is on Earth. That's the mass. Now, if I were to take that anvil into deep outer space, far away from any planets, it'd just hover there. I could put my palm under it or not. Okay? But if I were to anchor myself somehow and try to shake that, it would be just as hard in deep outer space as here on Earth. The mass is the same everywhere. And it's very different than weight. One story. I have a son who got his bachelor's in physics, made me very, very proud. And then he went to the dark side and got an MBA and started a business. But when he was in middle school here in Bozeman, we got a call from the principal asking my wife and I to come down and talk about our son. Now we were surprised because our son was never in trouble. Never in trouble. And so we get there and we walk in and there's the science teacher. And he's mad. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, I was trying to give my lecture and your son went ballistic. I said, well, what was the lesson about? I was trying to teach those students that weight and mass are the same thing, and he exploded. He just started saying, are not. And I looked at him and I said, are not? He said, of course they are not. And then he said, I'm the science teacher. I said, Trump, I wrote the book. I was ticked. I was ticked at him. I just said, how could you teach science and not know the difference between these two basic concepts? I wanted that principal to fire that guy. And then I cooled down. I apologized to the guy the next week. But I went home and I just grabbed my son and hugged him. I said, oh, I love you.